We mentioned it was a remarkable finish to round 9. The draw in Tasmania surprised so many, but as it turns out, what you don't know can actually come back and hurt you. And the question has to be raised, was North Melbourne properly set up, and have they been properly set up to deal with close finishes? Will you be the judge? Let's hear from Alistair Clarkson last year and the development coach Michael Barlow last week.
It seems a little bit comical that we weren't doing a hell of a lot of it in the first half of the year, because what's the point practicing something that you're never in close finishes? It's pretty hard for players to get motivated to practice red time finishes in games when you're very rarely in them.
Practicing like when you've got to score with 3 points, or you're down, you've got to hold a lead.
So we probably don't do a huge amount of it, to be honest, because we're a side. We've done a bit. We have there's been a bit of time put into it, but in terms of on the weekly, not really. No. You put a lot of time into your meat and potatoes.
Now, that might not surprise a lot of people. We know that North Melbourne are on a journey from the bottom towards the top. But when you compare that to what Craig McKay said in his second season as coach of Collingwood after the 2023 preliminary final win against GWS, it gets more interesting.
Yeah, week after week I sit here and we've won a close game again. And last year, we didn't quite get it done in finals. We lost a couple of close ones. But all those lessons are why we're here now and we're still breathing. Because we practice it. Again, 2 years of practicing scenarios. 2 minutes to go, kill the game. 2 minutes to go, we need to win. It's over, it's rehearsed for these moments.
So, Jimmy, I'll go to you. If you're a North Melbourne fan sitting at home tonight watching that, are you frustrated that your club isn't practicing it like Collingwood were under Craig McKay in year 2?
You probably want them to start practicing it now that you're getting better contests and getting better contests for longer. But you've got to keep in mind with Collingwood too, they still had Scott Pendlebury and Steele Sidebourne back in those when Craig McKay started. They'd been in a lot of final situations. You had on-field leaders. You compare that to North Melbourne. We compare that to most clubs. They don't have a Pendles and a Sidebottom, but they probably had 100 things they wanted to work on, and close game finishes at the start were probably the 86th on the list. But now they have to start working on them because they've been more competitive.
Scott has said, though, he's learnt a lot from Craig McKay. So even though he's been in the game for 20 years, he has learnt a lot, including these types of things. So I am surprised, Sam. And obviously, you hear a little context from Michael Barlow there, but the Clarkson one talking about that. I would say that being full-time professionals, despite where you are, how you're going, every aspect is covered throughout an AFL week and pre-season to be prepared. And in the last 3 weeks, they've lost by 9 points v Port, 3 points v Essendon, and a draw v the Brisbane Lions. So you
it's a pattern of behaviour.
You don't want to be saying, leaving, going, oh, if only we could have done this or only we could have done that. If we trained this, we might have won that one. So I still think I find it a bit surprising.
Yeah, and these are the mistakes that were made against Brisbane Lions. Now, some people may view this performance, I don't know you're in this camp, that this was a game that they ultimately drew against the reigning premier. But to your other point about losing round 7, 8 and 9 by a combined 12 points, and also to answer this season, guys, end of the 2025 season, on the back of the decision they made boldly in the national draft last year. We'll touch on the specifics of this in a moment, but they felt they were going to be spiking in this year's performance. And it is comical for Alistair Clarkson to say that in round 15 last year and to now get to round 9 and for them to not have fixed this issue, because the last 3 matches could have been won and they could be sitting there with 4 wins to their name.
What did you expect from them this year? Like, how many wins would you have expected?
8 to 10, on the way they were talking. And they talked about 10 2024. Look, what we do know is that they've won basically since the start of 2020 16 times. Now, 15 matches have been won in the previous 5 seasons, 1 this year. You get to this stage of each of those seasons and it's obviously going to be reflected in how they are after round 9 of each of those years, and it doesn't get better for them. And it's headed that same way again.
I think... So there would be people sitting at home tonight saying, oh, OK, well, they're an easy target, North Melbourne. We talk negatively about them a lot. But the thing is, if we didn't care about them, we wouldn't talk about them. The fact that they put it on the agenda, as Damo said at the start of the year, we want to get better. This is our year to start winning games of football, to start going up the ladder. And then you hear from the club saying, well, we're not really practicing close finishes. I think North Melbourne members would be entitled to be quite frustrated at that.
Yeah, well, they are. And I think it's demoralising for the players too. Now, how many times can George Wardlaw trudge off a game without winning? Now, there's a draw on the weekend to add to one win, but Lotto, he's played 29 matches of football. He's experienced victory once. Ben McKay left after winning 8 times only in 71 matches. I mean, the toll of not winning and the toll of not preparing to win, and that's what we're talking about here. They're not preparing to win in these moments.
Yeah, and you don't know how to win, and that's a problem. But there's many Gold Coast Suns players who have felt that way over time, and now look at them. So I just feel that North Melbourne, I just have belief in the quality of these players and the youngsters.
You're still a believer?
I'm still a believer.
Okay.
But I will say this. This is their grand final on the weekend. Their grand final for the year.
Against Richmond.
Richmond, and I won't be so positive. So I'm a glass half full on what they did on the weekend. When you go into a game against the reigning premiers and you come out and say, we've gone toe-to-toe with the reigning premiers and we've come out and a draw. Now that means nothing if we don't go on and beat Richmond at the MCG this week. And then 2 weeks after that, they play the West Coast Eagles in Bunbury. That should be another game they should be winning. So they should be 3 wins in 3 weeks, 3.5 wins in 3 weeks' time if they are serious with the talent that they've got.
Selling that home game against the West Coast Eagles looks even worse now. I mean, they need that win desperately. And at home, it looks a lot easier than going over to the West.
Well, that's true as well, but that's an entirely different conversation. It's got nothing to do with messing up and missing opportunities. I'll go with the last 3 weeks, but certainly the last 2. Essendon last week and the Brisbane Lions on the weekend just gone.
It was an interesting result for the Geelong Footy Club on the weekend. I know we're not used to speaking negatively about your former club, but Chris Scott has achieved just about everything there is to achieve in football as a player and also as a coach. And it was talked about that, the Josh Barnes article in the Herald Sun on the weekend. He's usually looking one step ahead. Even if you make a move, it might have already been worked. He's never been afraid to throw around his magnets. He threw around the magnets again on the weekend. They started Jeremy Cameron in the middle. They got close, it didn't quite work out, and the man himself was happy to take responsibility.
I was about to say we. It was me. We made some errors early with the way we structured up. Took a few educated risks, and I thought that actually destabilised us a little bit. So, as always, when you don't get the outcomes you're after, it's a little bit the players, and it's a lot the way you set up. So, we look at ourselves first.
Yeah, admire the honesty there about sometimes you try some things and sometimes they come off, sometimes they don't. But uncharacteristic mistakes from Geelong in this game, not what you'd expect. So Dangerfield hits that. I reckon they win the game. He's got to be stronger, so he's a real worry for them. That's not a great effort. They'd be embarrassed on a Monday. I was about to say weak, which I thought that effort
Embarrassed?
was. Yeah, he would be embarrassed with that effort. Their team defence was really, really poor with where we'll talk about Jesse Hogan soon. That's a poor decision from Brian Myers. So, Jimmy, they're a pretty experienced group still, despite having players out, but they failed in some moments like.
Yeah, it looked like one too many out. When you throw in Stewart, of course, is the anchor in the defence, and they all fold off the back of that. Humphreys has been so important already in the early part of his career, and then Henry, who's probably the second, stabilising point back there. And I know they've all missed footy. Collar Jasny hasn't played in quite some time, so they've gotten used to playing without him. Not that they don't value him, they've just gotten used to not playing with him. But what the Giants were able to do, they were able to break through that front line of the contest, and that's what puts your decision-making under the pump. You highlighted the Koning. He didn't know whether to roll up or come across to the side. And we have a look at some of these edits, Lloydie and Jesse Hogan. And one thing about Jesse Hogan, he never stays still. He constantly has his defender with his head on the swivel, like pivoting. Where's he going next? Look at the amount of times he re-leads here. And De Koning doesn't know whether to watch the footy, which is the Geelong way to defend. You watch the footy, you come over and intercept. But he's getting caught in no man's land because it's come from further up the field. So the Cats would actually look at, is there enough pressure on the ball carrier? So like Callaghan, Ash, Whitfield, these sort of guys who can break a line, they catch you really short in defence and scrambling. And with Hogan's ability to find space inside forward 50, this highlights it really well. Guthrie rolls up, but they're able to win the contest, which then leaves the Cats defence 10, 15 metres off their direct opponent.
Watching that game, Damo, I had myself thinking the Tom Hawkins loss, sat back and go, Shannon Neal isn't really doing it for me, or Geelong. and then suddenly Dangerfield's having to be that forward. Now, he's been fantastic. Like, he's been potentially in all-Australian form, but I still think they should have pulled the trigger and got him into that midfield because, it was an issue for them there, and they need two of him, unfortunately, at the moment.
You've been critical of Jake Stringer and his preparation previously on this show and his days at Essendon. Another injury on the weekend. What have you made of him as a giant thus far?
It's been a struggle for him. He's been
flashes.
Yeah, but he's been inaccurate, and now, unfortunately, he had hiccups going into the season. He was ill.
He had a hamstring or a soft tissue. So this is the second time he's done a soft tissue in the short time he's been there. What I will say in his defence, he's had 3 scoring shots per 8 of the matches he's played. Now, of the 7 games he's played. Now, unfortunately for him, only 8 of them have been goals, 13 behinds to go with. So he is hitting the scoreboard. He kicked 2 goals on the weekend, 3 the week before. He might have just been starting to get into that system.
I'll just say, though, talent's never been his problem. It's more that you look across the board, Jordan De Goey, chasing his tail a lot in terms of preparation. And then you've got a guy like Jake Stringer chasing his tail a fair bit because they're never quite fully prepared.
You think he has to take ownership for that?
Yeah, I think so. And that's, bad luck doesn't keep happening to the same people.
If he helps them win a final and puts on a quarter or two, he sort of pays for himself, doesn't he, this year?
He does. They didn't give up a lot for him, but it's a big if. It's a big if you're missing consistent footy.
There's quite a few big ifs around the West Coast Football Club, and unfortunately Andrew McWalter wasn't able to get his first win as coach on the weekend. I think now the conversation has to turn to Oscar Allen and the compensation that they may or may not get. Now, whether the AFL like us talking about it or not, free agency and the secret herbs and spices that goes into the compensation has been used as a mechanism to help promote a team back up towards the middle part of the ladder, Damo.
That's fair to say.
These are some of the examples of the compensation that has gone over the years. So you just talked about Ben McKay. You can see about 5 players down there. That was pick 3. The last pick 3 before that was Tom Lynch, who was a captain, a star of the Gold Coast Suns. James Frawley went and won a premiership at Hawthorn after leaving Melbourne. That was pick 3, and that was seen as at the time, Damo, as one of those situations.
Well, it was one of those occasions where they could make the formula be whatever they wanted it to be, Sam, because he wasn't getting paid of an amount at the new club, Hawthorn, to give Melbourne that pick, and that became Angus Brayshaw. So, to your point, the AFL can use its own systems this way, and I've got no doubt that West Coast, wherever it finishes on the ladder, will be able to get the pick, should Oscar Allen go as a free agent, immediately beneath it. So they could have picks.
Is that right, though, Damo?
No, it's not right, because I've never been clear on it, and I've had briefings about it. I've been given documentation around it, and it changes every year. Look at Joe Danaher, another celebrated one you just saw there. Now, initially, when he left Essendon to go to Brisbane, he signed a 3-year deal. Now, within 12 months of that deal being signed, the Lions added 2 years to it. Now, the compensation was awarded on the initial contract, which clearly was front-ended to make it appealing enough to have Joe Danaher as a pick for Essendon that was really good. And look, I've written about it regularly. Look, they don't like us talking about it. I'm not on my own in saying this, but that's just a reminder of how recent this was. And they, again, have supposedly cracked down on this loophole.
Well, they've changed the rule, haven't they?
Well, why do they need to in the first place?
They've said they've changed the rule. And for those of you who didn't follow it as closely, what Damo's saying is that they essentially gave Danaher a higher deal per year to make it a 3-year deal. And then as soon as so they get the compensation for Essendon. As soon as he signed, they gave him a 2-year extension. Now, the AFL cracked down on that, to Damo's point, because clubs have complained. But look, there's something that sits uncomfortably within me that West Coast refused to see the cliff for years and years and years. They kept going to the well, Now it's hit them like a ton of bricks, and they want to come back up the ladder. And I think they're going to be able to use Oscar Allen to do that. But I'm just not sure, Jimmy, that whoever ends up getting him is going to be paying the money that would dictate a pick 2.
You don't think he'll get paid a significant amount that it gets a first-round ban? And the point of it being is why they stick it behind your first pick if it's a first-round ban is to stop the bottom clubs being completely pillaged. So you can get those multiple picks. It's different when it's at the higher end, which then you can make the case at the other end. Clubs who are losing players and are premiers like the Lance Franklin one, you go, well, Hawthorn didn't get full value for Lance Franklin.
So what number, dollar-wise, needs to get pick 2, you think? Is it like close to $1 million?
Well, with the increase in the salary cap,
upwards of
it would have to be $1 million.
And I would have said at the start of the year, I was so positive about him saying, I'm handing that to Oscar Allen.
You'd write the cheque.
But right now I wouldn't. So that's where it's going to be really interesting to see what sort of footy he can play, because he's not worth $1 million right now. He's worth probably $650.
When this all flushes out, if he does go as a free agent, I'll be staggered if it doesn't come immediately after West Coast's pick.
Yeah, you can imagine Richmond, who have North Melbourne's pick, will be sitting there going, like, this could cost us, the kid that we want. They're going to get 1 and 2, and we're going to end up with 3 instead of 2. Anyway, there's a lot to play out in that space. We mentioned Andrew McWalter's still searching for that first win, but he's looking for those green shoots. He's looking at the long-term view.
We're not looking for a short-term fix here. We're trying to build a way of playing and the behaviours that we think will win for a long period of time. So there's some little wins we're having along the way. We're judged by win-loss, I understand that, but we're getting a lot of experience that will help these guys, particularly our younger players, for a long period of time. And hopefully singing the song's not far around the corner.
They've thrown away a couple. They should have beaten Essendon. They were well up there. Obviously, that game on the weekend. They have St Kilda in Perth this week, which is another opportunity. But he's a human being, and he must be asking himself, when is that first win going to come for me? He's only human. Hope he's got some good support around him, because he's been in the system a long time, but a young, inexperienced coach, and he's trying to keep everybody else up. But he must be going home of a night going, when is this first win going to come?
And surely he's looking at the opposition they played and how quickly they can turn around and actually put hope back into the club. Of course, Richmond coming off those 3 premierships, they tried again a little bit with the experienced boys and were pretty brave. They moved quite a number on, got a stack of draft picks in through the door, and it'd be an exciting time to be watching the young Tigers go about it. You still got to add back Gibcus to Brown, Campbell, Fall, Banks, Armstrong, Lawler, Smiley, Trainer, Sims, McAuliffe, Tresize. Like, how exciting would that be for Richmond? And of course, Adamuze, having all that young group come through together.
Yeah, they've got some pillars, haven't they, to build the next 10, 15 years around. And
got
you can
some
see
talent.
You can see that with kids going with numbers on their back, knowing who they're barracking for as they build back up the ladder.
And they seem to be prepared and training for moments that were in front of them against West Coast on the weekend, the close finishes.
Was that just another little drive-by?
Well,
from
just
North?
saying, they've won 3 matches out of 9, Sam, and
I'm with you.
They are so far behind North Melbourne in planning.
They play each other this week, so we'll see.
The reverse Cruiser Cup, isn't it?
Yes, because it's
no tanking. They actually need the pick.
Yeah, because Richmond owns North Melbourne's pick.
Okay, geez, great start on Footy Classified. Plenty more to come after the break, including a hellish season continuing for the Demons. We ask if they're about to repeat the same old mistakes. The Blues bounce back, giving TDK plenty to think about as his big decision looms. And are we finally seeing a new dawn as Dimmer's Suns tough it out in Darwin? Footy Classified continues after this. Clayton Oliver is frustrated with his lack of game time that he's being afforded at the Melbourne team right here, right now.
There was Sam McClure, I think, who went with the reason that he wasn't playing and the reason that he was unhappy was some of it was around game time.
Yeah.
So, what was the dialogue in at the footy club about, essentially guessing as to why he's not playing?
My own personal view, it's just like, not only is Clayton going to think twice before taking time off, I'm going to think twice before taking time off. Young players are going to think twice before taking off because he's literally not had an article written about him for 5 weeks, takes time off, and then bang, he's the front page, back page of every paper. And some of the stuff I get, the doorstop I get, the trade speculation I get, just like speculating why he's unstable.
Welcome back to Footy Classified. Sam, we just heard Nick Revold there saying that you guessed. What do you say to that?
Is that what he said? I'm not sure it's exactly.
Essentially guessing, he said.
Well, Nick's entitled to his view. He's doing an unbelievable job in the media, and he's a huge name, former legend of the game. And I thought, if I'm allowed to report on something, people are allowed to discuss what I report. So that's fair and reasonable. I think Max spoke eloquently as he always does. So that's all fine. That's above board.
But you must get offended, though, to be called guessing, because, of course, you're not going to guess in this situation.
I honestly...
in any situation.
Yeah, I wasn't offended. I heard it and I was interested in it, but I've been doing this for a while now, Lloydie, like you have. It's all part of it. People are allowed to discuss what I report, and Melbourne all throughout the week supported and defended their player, which is their right and their prerogative, and I'm sure Melbourne supporters love their club for that.
Were you challenged hardest on that you spoke about a player dealing with mental health, or that you spoke about he was having trouble with the role he was being and the amount of time he was on the bench, interchange? What was the thing that you were challenged hardest on?
I won't go into personal conversations. What I will say is that I think there was probably a level of frustration from people inside Melbourne that the timing of the story was directly when he said, OK, well, I'm just putting up my hand and I'm not playing. And I totally respect that and understand that. But, we have jobs in our roles that are sometimes going to conflict with the jobs of people in football clubs. And I think that that's fair and reasonable.
Where do you sit with that, Damo? Reporting on somebody who's come out and said they have momentum.
Yeah, look, it's a fine line. And again, I know Sam well enough to know that if he's going to go and put his name to a story, he's not guessing. In terms of my own dealings with people with mental health, it's a specific case each time, Lordo, and I can't put myself into this story because of that matter. I mean, you're about to talk about Harry McKay coming back into the game, playing really, really well. But before we do that, you want to have a look at some players returning to WA and other comments that Max Gawn has made today on Triple M.
Yeah, and firstly, Damo, I want to touch on the issues at Melbourne, who are a bottom 4 club now. Can you believe that Melbourne are a bottom 4 team? And these are the areas that they are struggling in. So they've got Max Gawn, and it's only started to fire the last 3 weeks where they've won a few games through clearance. But scores per inside 50 is the same old problem. Goals per inside 50, same old problem. But apart from Gawn and Langford, Jimmy, I don't see too many other things that I'd be too excited about. Gawn's been brilliant. Langford's has been a really good player. The dominant player would be in the window for Rising Star. But not too much else to get excited about.
Lindsay's shown bits, Bowie as well. So I think there's individuals, Lloydie, that you can pluck things, but it's actually the style of footy at the moment. They're still going to the well with that heavy contested style. They've got a bit better with once it gets outside the bubble, being able to handball their way through, but they need a big shift.
It's actually quite confronting when you say it out loud that they're a bottom 4 club, isn't it?
Yeah.
That's how far they've fallen.
It is, and they're playing Brisbane this weekend, and I think to myself, those two would play absolutely epic games only a few years ago, where you'd go, I want to watch this game, and they could go either way, and how Brisbane, where they've gone, and where Melbourne are.
I think the big decision for them will come if they finish 14th or 15th again. It'll be the decision like Hawthorn and Richmond said, well, we finished 14th and 15th with this group of players. Is it time to change that group of players, even though the reputations are fantastic? So when Hawthorn went Mitchell and O'Meara, well, we finished down here with them.
So you wouldn't fear now losing a Petrarca like at the end of the year? You know what, it was a fearful thought last year, but maybe not now?
I think that's what they've got to weigh up. If we're going to keep finishing in these spots with those players, at some point you're going to have to go, well, we might have to do the bold, brave thing.
It feels like wherever they finish, there's change of foot. If you listen to Max Gawn on Triple M, that his old friend, Luke Jackson, could be on the way back to the club. And then on the back of that, you'll hear him from a couple of years ago when news came first through that Brodie Grundy had joined him at Melbourne.
Yeah, I've got a thing with WA, boys.
You got a theory on this?
Yeah, I just feel like WA is an unbelievable place to be when you're 18, 19. It feels like it's a great party. And these Perth boys go back at 22 and all their mates have sort of grown up a little bit. And then they go, like, there's so many people that have got to trade back to WA and then come back. Not mentioning one that potentially could be coming back.
Haven't really seen 2 rucks play together who both really love that ruck role. But as we both get older, we both develop different parts of our game. And I see it working really well. I'm really, really excited. I'm really bullish about the fact it can work.
I have to chuckle that first grab there. Essentially, all but saying that Luke Jackson is potentially on his way back to Melbourne. That's actually amazing, the current sort of trade speculation that we're in.
Yeah, it is. And look, I sort of asked the question of Luke Jackson, if it gets to that point, was Melbourne's the last place I'd want to be a ruckman. We've seen it. We've seen it before where people say, well, Max Gawn, how long can he keep going for? He's still the best ruckman in the game.
It was a couple of years ago, though. Like, you can understand it now, can't you? At his age.
Well, Luke Jackson is having problems at Fremantle because he's trying to share. Luke Jackson's a ruckman, not a forward. So does he want to have another... Max Gawn's got 2 years left in him, hasn't he? The way he's playing football.
Yeah.
So
he's contracted for that.
And so does he want to be a forward? He's just got to... I think they have to say to Sean Darcy, Sean, sorry, we've tried to make this work, but Luke, we're going to build our side around you at the Fremantle Dockers, whether they can keep him or not.
Speaking of forwards, we need to talk about Carlton and St Kilda and what happened on Friday night. We just mentioned Clayton Oliver and the situation that he's been facing in the last couple of weeks with mental health. Harry McKay, we know publicly he's been quite brave about that, has come out and talked about it. Since he's been back, his work rate's been quite extraordinary, hasn't it?
Yeah, I just absolutely wrapped for him, and the club handled him really well. And you know, he was back playing VFL football, so he couldn't bring himself to play AFL football. But he has won 2 games, Jimmy, for his clubs against Geelong and also St Kilda in the last 3 weeks.
Yeah, whether it's hitting the scoreboard or being that big mark late down the line, and his contested marking is as good as it's ever been. But this was the big one, wasn't it, Lloyd? We were sitting watching this at the G. Really, the sealer in the game from the pocket, and look at the emotion come out. I'm with you. I was just happy for the guy.
And the other thing I'll say is through it all, he must be working so hard, even though he's needed to take time off, because his fitness and his ability to get up and down the ground, it's a credit to him.
Just one word answer on the Tom de Koning Cup. Where will Tom be playing football next year?
Carlton. I don't know.
I'm saying Carlton, but it's a complete guess.
Oh, 3 Carltons. Yeah. That's quite boring. No, I declined to answer. Coming up on Footy Classified, much more. It was a bad weekend for free-to-air TV, given the games that we saw on Fox. We take a closer look at that in the water cooler, plus the latest on Willie Rioli. But get set, because coming up after Footy Classified, it's that show. Players. It's straight up after tonight's show, and 3 of the biggest names in the game. Harley Reid, Harry Sheasel, joined Felix von Hoff, and also that man Cam Rayner in the Players studio. So after Footy Classified, do not change that channel. Players is next.
I know things are getting expensive with the cost of living these days. Even KO's gone up another $5.
I did get that email the other day, actually.
Welcome back to Footy Classified. You can't help but laugh when BT says those sort of things. But on the serious side of it, Damo, and you have worked closely with him for a long time, but it's very rare that you would hear one broadcaster talking about another. But yet, you know, like the last 6 games on the weekend, I think, were decided by a total of less than 5 goals. Yet only one of those was seen on free-to-air. It is an issue that a lot of people are talking about.
It is, and it's one that BT's immersed in because of the ad that Foxtel did at the start of the year, where they were celebrating the fact that he personally, along with other viewers of free-to-air football, was shut out of their coverage on the Saturday. So he's now had a couple of occasions where he's used his own media platforms to get back. He used the Channel 7 platform this week, and there's even been AFL intervention on the 2 networks as to how that BT part of that ad is presented in the future uses of that ad. But ultimately, it's a public issue, Sam, and to your point, a lot of football was missed and has been missed to this point. We've got 7 years of this deal. It's not changing. People need to get their heads around that.
OK, so pressure can't change this. It's just we've got to get used to it. People just have to get used to it.
Well, the deal's signed. This is the 7-year add-on to the deal. It was struck by Gillian McLaughlin. The game itself decided to go down this path, take the Foxtel money, which is needed to prop the game up and to keep the CBA at the levels it is. So it's going to require a revisitation of that 7-year deal.
Which, I mean, I guess there is a tiny possibility that the new owners of Foxtel DAZN, a Saudi company, come in and want to re-look at the deal. Although what we know about Saudi ownership usually is they're not that interested or they don't prioritise turning a profit. They're more trying to get their money into.
But why would they look at it? I mean,
well,
they've got access exclusively to the Saturday.
But if they were to look at another element of the deal, it might open the door for 7. But it is fascinating. So
that would require 7 to also pay money, which by reports is not readily available.
So we've already had 10 games this year on Saturdays decided by less than 10 points. So that's the things that are not being seen, Jimmy, on free-to-air. And I'm not sure. I mean, I get stopped and talked and asked about it quite a lot. I'm sure you guys
It's the biggest topic rolling throughout the course of the year. It is.
I think it is, outside of what happens on the field.
Yeah, and I can understand the pressures on families, of course, and there'd be other people going, well, suck it up. So there's either side of the argument. I'd prefer as much footy to be accessible for everyone because it's a great game and to see those magnificent games. So I'm probably on the side, well, how can we make it available for everyone? But if the deal is locked in, I don't know how we unpick it.
Will the day come where the odd final or 2 isn't shown on free-to-air, Will we get there in 10, 15, 20 years' time?
I don't think so. What I think will happen in the next broadcast deal, in the next decade, I think we've got a streaming service that will buy one of the nights. I think it'll be Thursday or a Friday night that's exclusively on Netflix or Disney or Paramount or one of these companies. I think that's where the game is going. Hey, it was really hours after we walked off the set of Footy Classified a week ago that the Willie Rioli saga exploded. It took over the news cycles for the next few days of not 1, not 2, but 3 separate incidents. And it has, I think, Damo, caused a rift between the Port Adelaide Football Club and the AFL. That's certainly how other clubs are viewing it. Chris Davies has been quite vocal in his thoughts, the head of football at Port Adelaide, one of the most senior administrators in the game. And this caught our ear on 3AW on the weekend.
That letter asked the AFL to consider the way that they can help to influence the way that racially motivated situations in their competition can be reported into the future. The idea that Willie Rioli was racially abused post his Instagram post was totally incorrect. Willie Rioli gets racially abused almost every day. When he does something good or bad in people's eyes on the field, he becomes a lightning rod for that. I think there are more conversations that the AFL need to help to facilitate into the future if they're going to start talking about patterns of behaviour as a reason why they sanctioned Willie Rioli in this instance.
So this was spoken about at commission level today at the meeting in Darwin. So the background quickly to all of this is that the AFL found out about the extra incidents and they got the CEOs together, Jimmy, and they said, hey, look, we need to know. There needs to be more people disclosing events that happen like this so that we can be aware of it. And Chris Davies' point is, well, hang on, I wrote to you 5 weeks ago and spoke to you about the issues that we're dealing with. So there's a difference of opinion, isn't there, between the AFL and the clubs?
Yeah, I only pose this question to the rest of you guys, the lack of transparency between clubs and the AFL. And every time we interview anyone in a club position, whether it be a coach, assistant coach, GM or CEO, they all are, single-minded in let's get the soft cap back up. And so you wonder whether there's a feeling amongst clubs going, well, if you're not with us, we just won't deal with you. We might as well deal with whatever situations we've got between club to club. And that's what we found out when Geelong and Port Adelaide just dealt it with themselves instead of actually going to the AFL.
And they're dealing with media too, Jimmy, on certain aspects of this. Not always with this Rioli situation, but other issues they've got with the game.
So I don't know the answer.
You think there's a link there? Well, a link between... So I'm just trying to... A link between the drop in... The reduction in football cap spend?
Yeah, I just think this... I think this administration with the AFL had an intent to bring the clubs closer together, but at the moment there's a clear angst between clubs and the AFL about where we're going with the soft cap, where we're going with the game. So I think the clubs are just thinking, well, we'll just work out things ourselves.
Yeah.
And we'll deal with situations amongst each other.
Just on that too today was discussed at the commission meeting, and there will be an increase yet to be determined in that soft cap, which has been the clubs crying out for.
The swan dive, Lordo, continued on the weekend, and it's just not the side that we were witnessing 12 months ago.
Yeah, they beat the Giants the week before, and you thought, OK, are they back? But they were down by 39 points at half-time, and this is just what they were like the year before. So this time last year, round 10, 2024, they were first for points for, first for points against, and everyone says, oh, who's going to beat this team? They are just outrageous with their skills, and yes, they've got no Errol Goulden, who makes a massive difference to this team with how he can bid. Now they've just fallen apart. New coach. I just think they look confused defensively, and then offensively they turn the footy over a lot. So
system or confidence or both?
I think it's a bit of everything. Obviously, personnel, but it's adjusting to the new coach and a lack of confidence. Poor forward line who doesn't really, but they had that poor same forward line last year. So. They've dropped up in just every area.
OK, you're running hot, Lordo. You're going to need to, because the Sledgehammer, which everyone is watching, is up next on Footy Classified.
We showed earlier how Geelong were all at sea defensively, and Connor O'Sullivan was one of the main culprits. He's a young player, but Jesse Hogan's kick 6, he's on him. Not sure where he's going and what he's trying to do in this situation, leaving a man to go on and kick his 7th goal in Jesse Hogan. This man, Jeremy Cameron, you do not give him his left side and you've got to follow it through a stoppage. Connor Iden, he ends up here. Jeremy Cameron ends up there. You don't give him that time. You don't give him that space. He'll punish you. Speaking of space, not sure what Georgie Hewitt's doing here on Jack Sinclair. The seas just parted for him and they nearly took the game away from the Blues. We'll watch that again. Here he is. George Hewitt, you've got to see that through on Jack Sinclair. Shea Bolton, I talk about gun players who don't like to defend. Here he is here. He's got a bumper bar Jamie Elliott, not let him through late in the game. Look at that. He didn't really want to go. Jamie Elliott has a high work rate and gets over the back there, and you just see Shea Bolton on all fours. He couldn't run there. He could not go with Jamie Elliott or didn't really want to. I love young players who want to make a mark in the game and work hard. And Cooper Lord, I'm not sure he'll be the sub for much longer because he just kicked that ball off half back. Look at that work rate. He just kept running and running and running. He bobs up. And look at the score there, 64-61. The Blues are 3 points up. he puts them in 9 points up, and that was a stealer in the game. Love seeing that. Spoiling in the game. I love Dustin Fletcher because he'd heave him 10 rows back. So O'Donnell, it's a fantastic spoil. This one's a bit tougher, but the last place you want to leave it is in the corridor. That's Sam Taylor. You want to angle your wrist one way or the other. Dropped it in the spot for Brian Myers, who punishes you. So that's something I look out for every Saturday or Sunday.
Oh, you don't miss anything, does the Sledgehammer. The good thing is it's good and bad. That Bolton vision, not good.
Not so good.
Not so good. The Cooper Lord vision, very good though. I tell you what also is very good is good call, bad call. It's next. Welcome back to Footy Classified. Good call, bad call, and we're getting political to start with, Jimmy. Peter Dutton was right all along. The days of working from home are over. Good call, bad call.
Well, I'm going to have a look at the vision now after you throw to that.
I think we've tried a few things in our forward line to try and find a mix while we can't have those people. So I think for us, our ability to make sure that our ability to be able to try and still execute inside 50, and that's.
That might be actually a good call, Sam, and Mr Dutton's got some time on his hands to work on it.
Sam, this one's to you. It can be hard to let go of former glories. Good call, bad call?
No, that's a bad call from you, Damo, a sarcastic call. We all loved Anthony Hudson calling Lance Franklin's 13, and he was up to it again.
Fletcher, 13 seconds to go.
When you've got a good thing, just keep rolling it out.
Damo, Mark Keane is the new Brett Kirk. Good call, bad call?
Well, let's take a look at his post-match interview after his showdown heroics, Lotto.
Yeah, we just wanted to play footy. That's what we're here for, is playing footy and have a good brand of footy, and just whoever wins the contest is footy and wins the footy will win the game. And
win the footy, love the footy. that could have, over time, Lotto, a similar place to the Brett Kirk interview.
Well, Lordy, Mark Blitzars was never going to kick the match winner against GWS. Good call, bad call?
Good call by you, insightful call, because I think he wanted to get away. So he in danger. He marked it. Danger's ripped it off him, and they've worked out, OK, Blitzars doesn't want that. He's getting out of there.
It's gone.
And he's been called back. And always, whenever a player looks to give it off before wanting to have a shot or try and run off James Manson style. Remember that back in the day? But anyway, it's never a good sign. So I reckon Mark's going to back himself in next time.
You would have never run away from one of those in your life. Yeah, you were running to get it.
Gary hurt his hip. I was trying to take it.
We all know that vision. Jimmy, Luke Beveridge has taken his action man persona to a new level. Good call, bad call?
Let's take a look at what you're mentioning here, Sam. Oh, there he is. He's got the sunnies on there. It's pretty sharp.
So the security guards?
Oh, well, yeah, he needs those to get down through the crowd. I like this one where he jumps the fence at gather round. Oh, that's a bad call. This is just Bevo being Bevo, isn't it?
He needs his own action figure.
Yeah, actually, you're right. I'll come back with a good call. Sell that in the Dogs merchandise store.
You change your tune quickly.
Oh, well, action figure, why not?
Hey, Sam, it's not just the journos who get caught up in the race to be first. Good call, bad call?
I think this is an interesting call from you because I think commentators are starting to listen to each other.
Al-Huli in just his fourth game. Mother's Day tomorrow, but the smothers count now.
Time enough for something crazy. Great smother. Happy Mother's Day.
Hutto and Dwayne, two of the all-time greats.
Damo, the AFL chickens are coming home to roost. Good call, bad call?
It's a good call, Lotto, because what you're referring to is the postponement of the opening round game between Gold Coast and Essendon all the way through to end of round 2024. It's going to cause carnage. It may be a Wednesday to Wednesday fixturing of that particular round with both those teams to play twice in that particular week. But, yeah, problems everywhere.
Lloydie, I'm a bit nervous for this next one. We're a family here at 9 Network. Good call, bad call?
I think that could be a bad call. The Players show is taking off after hours, but did Felix von Hoff try and throw a man, Scoot McClure, under the bus?
Harley, Footy Classified, hosted by Sam McClure. Do you have any advice for him?
I'll probably just get his draft predictions right.
Ooh, coming up after Footy Classified.
I reckon that was rehearsed on you.
Do you reckon? They got me.
Oh, yeah.
Do you, Lotto?
Yeah.
We're a team here at 9. The whole station's a team.
We'll have to get Felix for some 360-degree feedback, I think.
Don't you start throwing people under the bus. The cook is next, and as we know, it could be anything.
I'm already excited about the upcoming cricket season where I play local cricket, but I've got a cook tonight for the Bangladeshi wicket-keeper who tried this, keeping it first slip. Absolutely bizarre. So here he is, the wicket-keeper. Not sure what he was doing, but he was keeping it first slip, and the ball just hits the helmet and they give away 5 runs. So I'm not sure if the bowler got his lines wrong, Jimmy, or he just lost track of what he was doing. But he's standing in first slip. Yeah, hits... the helmet. So he's given away 5 runs, but it's not the silliest thing we've seen from a keeper. Right. So this is on a grand final on a Saturday. There's me batting. And
so what's about you?
No, he come forward, gone, caught behind. And look at the keeper here. He kicks the goal and gives the thumbs up for a goal. But you don't mess with Lordo, because the next day I'm in the field and this silly keeper clips it straight to me, and Lordo doesn't forget. So I go in his face, go bang, and say, I'm not copping that, buddy. I'm not copping that. And we went on and won the premiership. So karma got him good. Karma got him good.
Does he start laughing at you?
He just goes, you got me.
Oh, no.
That's from 2 years ago, though.
I know, but I enjoy the...
You had
the keeping...
That is keeping receipts for the best.
I can't believe you said Lordo doesn't forget on TV.
A great third person.
Hey, Footy Classified tomorrow night. Eddie, Hurdy, Rory and Tom. 9:45 tomorrow. Thank you, Damo. Thank you, James. And thank you to Don't Forget Lordo.
Yeah.
Lordo doesn't forget.
Doesn't forget.